Declaration of pecuniary interest, if anybody has it, now or later on. And point 3 is the determination of items requiring separate discussion. And we have the consent agenda before us, and that the following consent items be received and that staff be authorized to take the actions necessary. Correspondence be supported or received. Anything want to be pulled from the consent agendas? Pardon? Okay, John is moving it to get on the floor. Seconder, Councillor McQueen. Thank you, John.
Okay.
If you want to pull something. Okay. Anybody else want to pull anything? Councillor Fosbrook?
I'm going to go with C and D and E.
What's we left with there?
B, the Blue Mountain Task Force.
All right, so we have that motion on the floor.
And so if I may, just to have one quick question, it's got to be pulled, right?
The clerk will answer that.
Yes.
There we are. Okay, so we're referencing that B be part of this consent agenda, and that all in favor of passing B? Okay, that's approved. Okay, so we'll leave that, come back to them later. So we'll move on to items for direction and discussion. Put on the floor that the report CAOR CW 17-18 Countywide Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee be received, and that staff bring back a report with the terms of reference for a countywide accessibility advisory committee for council consideration, and that consideration be given to the 2019 operating budget for part-time staff's resources to oversee the accessibility coordinator function. Who's going to speak to that? Mr. Accessibility, Robert Hatton.
Thank you, Mr.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Eccles. Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. So as you all know, Grey County has an Accessibility Advisory Committee. It is a responsibility for all municipalities in Ontario with 10,000 or more residents to have one of these committees. However, all municipalities, regardless of size, are required to consult with people with disabilities on certain things that they're doing, like constructing new public facilities and parks and things like that. The role of an Accessibility Advisory Committee is to advise council on a few things. They help make sure that municipalities are compliant with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act and the accessibility standards within that act. And they are supposed to be consulted on a few things specifically. So that's creating and reviewing and updating multi-year accessibility plans, building or making major changes to recreational trails. So that would be sidewalks, beach access routes, but not backcountry trails like what we have many of at Grey County. Building or making changes to outdoor play spaces, the placement of rest areas, a lot of things with site-specific implications. And they're also expected to review site plans, so that would be for subdivisions, municipal offices, community centers, and recreational centers. So I guess really what I'm trying to get across here is that the AAC provides a lot of valuable information because they look at things differently than we might if we're not trained to look at things with accessibility in mind. And having our committee as well, they've been quite valuable in providing insight into our own services and what we're providing to the public, which they maybe don't necessarily have the requirement to consult on that, but they are really good at providing information that is making our services more inclusive and taking us beyond just compliance with the legislation that's out there. But AACs, they're not without their challenges. They are volunteer committees, so it of course is hard to recruit members that can, one, attend meetings, especially if they're daytime meetings, and just getting really qualified applicants that don't just live with disabilities, but they understand all of the legislation is in place and can provide really valuable input. And then once committees are established, if you are fortunate enough to recruit enough members, then as staff, we have to deal with coordinating all of the meetings and all of these conflicting schedules. Often these people have jobs, or they might just have difficulties in getting transportation here because of their disabilities. But we do work with them to find ways to make transportation easier. So this isn't a challenge that is unique just to Grey County as the county. Earlier this year, we reached out to the municipal CAOs and clerks group just to see if they're experiencing the same challenges. And 5 of them were really quick to respond that yes, they were. And we did just kind of ask if they would be interested in forming a joint municipal accessibility advisory committee. This is something that's permitted under the legislation. 2 or more municipalities can come together and share that knowledge in one place to look after their respective municipalities. And the ones that immediately at least expressed interest were West Grey, Georgian Bluffs, Grey Highlands, Southgate, and Chatsworth. Not to say that the others aren't interested, but it should be noted that a few of our municipalities, especially over 10,000, they already have their committees that they're running, and they might be operating, be fairly comfortable with how they're running now. But there are municipalities interested in that. So some of the benefits of a joint accessibility committee would mean that we're not competing for members to sit on our committees. At least 50% of members need to be people with disabilities, so that really narrows down who can qualify to sit on these committees. So we would only need to recruit members for 1 committee. It would create a consistent input from committee members from municipality to municipality. So you wouldn't be seeing different policies necessarily from place to place, because feedback would be coming across consistently. If there's only 1 committee, that would of course cut back on administration work at the staff point. And I think that it would make the meetings a lot more meaningful to our members as well, because I do feel a little bit of guilt sometimes with when we bring our committees in, that we don't have a whole, like we need to have so many meetings a year, and really just over this 3-month period, there wasn't a lot of meaningful work for them to review with what our expectations are for this committee at this time. So just in thinking more about what maybe the county can do to kind of address this problem and provide more support for the local municipalities, there's kind of 2 models that could be considered. The first would be simply a joint municipal accessibility advisory committee. So this would require local staff to attend meetings. They would need to bring municipal business to this committee so that it could be discussed by the group, and then they would take it back to your councils for review and approval of that input. The second model would be the county taking on a little bit larger role. What I've learned is that accessibility is often just another hat that people have to wear in their jobs, because it certainly isn't a full-time responsibility, but it is something that needs quite a bit of attention when it comes to compliance reporting, keeping policies and procedures up to date. And it's just one of those things that is growing workload on, and staff are struggling with that. I could see it being a benefit to all of Grey County for Grey County to assume a larger role in the accessibility responsibilities for the local municipalities if more resources were available. And under this model, it would be a county staff person that is responsible for keeping policies and procedures up to date for the local municipalities. They would do the annual compliance reporting to you as councils and the biannual reporting to the AODA. And it would also mean that we can have some better staff knowledge where they really become experts if they can be dedicating this much time specifically to accessibility, that it can be more effective in implementing changes through multi-year plans and really resolving issues as they arise, whether they be in relation to the AODA legislation, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the human rights issues that can come up as well. So, just getting back to the resolution that was just read out by the warden here today, I'm just asking the committee to receive today's report and support going forward with a terms of reference for a joint municipal accessibility advisory committee, and to speak with our local municipalities to be able to start considering for the 2019 budget additional part-time staff resources to oversee accessibility functions for Grey County and the participating local municipalities.
Thanks, Rob. That was a good report. Anybody want to ask Rob any questions on it? Yes, Scott.
Mr. Warden. Thanks, Rob. It makes complete sense to me instead of, all of us trying to create one of these committees. Any idea how, like from a funding perspective, how much you'd be requesting from each lower tier municipality? If, how much staff time is going to be involved? Do you have any sense of that?
Looking at what other municipalities are doing, it is kind of some have done a bill for service model. I'm thinking more down Perth County way, that's what they do. But I mean, I would be looking to council for direction on how they would want to approach that if it would just be a service provided.
CAO wants to comment.
Yeah, just the Rob and I's initial conversation, we hadn't thought that we were going to do a chargeback for this. We'll have to look at the staffing. We have a couple of places in the corporation where we have people that are working part-time already, doing other things, and if they could just, pick up, if this was like one more day or something for them, it might be able to work out that way. We didn't want to go too far down the road of numbers till we thought whether or not you were supportive of the idea in general, but we were just going to try and make it happen if we could.
Thanks for that question. Anybody else have? Yes, Councillor Fosbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So when I read the report, there was a concern about, lack of interest, I guess. And I wonder, how did we determine that this was volunteer and that we don't offer even an honorarium or some sort of reimbursement? Like, it doesn't have to be volunteer, does it?
I'll pass it to Heather. Yeah.
Like, I just, I think that if we compensated people for their time, that's the least we could do.
Yes, you certainly can.
In our history, we have always had volunteer committees. Every committee that I have known since in my tenure in the clerk's department has been volunteer. We pay for mileage. We provide food and beverages if necessary. I think the only committee, and I'm sort of on the outside of that, is the Joint Compliance Audit Committee that all of the clerks are working together that provide a bit of a stipend. It's my understanding the general practice, and it certainly has been Grey Counties, that it is all volunteer. That's how all of the terms of reference are completed and have been endorsed by council.
Thanks for that.
Well, I make the distinction because I've seen inconsistency, not just, at our lower tier itself, but across other municipalities. And it's my view that if we think we should be compensated for our expenses, then why wouldn't we offer the same thing to anybody who's prepared? And you are volunteering, you're not doing this for the money, but at least help them cover their cost. So I think that should be given consideration. I note that there is terms of reference already for our existing committee. We seem to be inconsistent about publishing for the various committees who the members are. And I guess one of the questions I have is, do we want members of these committees to be reachable by the community, by their peers? Or if somebody had a question that was related to accessibility, do they have to contact the clerk, who will contact the chair, who might contact a member? Because if I was a member of a committee, I wouldn't have a problem if somebody just called me up and said, hey, I know you're a member of the committee, I'd love to chat with you. How does that work? Like, first, we should disclose who the members are, and second, are they not reachable by the citizenry directly?
Well, I think
All the members are on the website.
the members are on the website, and I think that there is a chair. Councillor Burley is the chair of the Accessibility Committee, and he's reachable. So I think that that's part of the process that seems to be working. Yes, Councillor Burley.
I've sat on the Accessibility Committee for quite a long time now, and unfortunately, I have been the chair of the committee. It's, the biggest thing is to get the members to come to the committee, because they're really all over the county, and to get them here to attend a meeting at a certain time is very hard. What we tend to do on the committee level is that, and me as chair, if anyone from a lower tier or anyone has a question, we try to direct it to our accessibility coordinator, which is Rob. So we have, and then Rob in turn will send the information back to the committee members. It's just to keep consistency within the committee.
I would assume that Rob makes up the agendas for these minutes, for these meetings? Yeah, so your minutes or your agendas are driven by public input as well? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I don't see why it would be a different process as well if a community group or an individual wanted to speak at a meeting, that they would follow the same deputation process as well, if they wanted to advocate for something specifically. But as far as the day-to-day accessibility functions, that would fall to staff, not the committee members, to make sure that we're being compliant. And if we're having issues about the accessibility of one of our spaces, that we would handle that.
Okay. Yes, Councillor?
So somebody said that the members are listed online. I'm looking at the agendas and minutes, and I don't see that there. Maybe I need to look somewhere different? Okay. So the only
Clerk
other
is
thing.
looking, yeah.
The only
Sorry.
other thing I would mention is that with the advent of technology, and noting that the Board of Health, I think, is going to have some discussions about electronic voting and whatnot, the Accessibility Committee might be a great place to look for some creative ways to have members convene, but not necessarily in the same room physically. So just a thought. Thank you.
That's a good thought. Okay, yes, Councillor Mackey.
Rob, you mentioned in your report the requirements for municipalities when they're doing, a build to have consultation with the Accessibility Committee. Can you just quickly go over how, when we did the rebuild here at Grey County, what role your group played?
Good question. Our Accessibility Advisory Committee was involved from the early stages of reviewing the site plans in the building here, and providing feedback on that throughout. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning as well, aside from our voting members on our current committee, we do have some of the local municipalities staff attend, and they have some knowledge as well, so they provided input into the layout of the building and making sure that features were there. Now, this building is it would fall under the legislation in the Ontario Building Code as well, more than the Design of Public Spaces standard of the AODA. But we certainly had the committee looking at those drawings. They did multiple tours of the building. We did one following our last meeting again, just to see if now that we're fully complete, if there were any problems that they identified.
Okay, looks like we've covered that. Yes, Madam CEO.
From my quick research here, what I was able to discover, at least one example where the city of Aurelia, in their remuneration policies, does provide a stipend for persons other than members of councils appointed to their local boards or other bodies, and they list a whole slew of them here. They get $300 a year for being a member of the committee.
Well, Rob's going to bring a report back, so that you can consider that in there if you so choose. Okay. Yes, Councillor Vosper.
So just to follow up to that point, it has been my experience that there has been I have seen inconsistency in where individuals get compensated and where they don't get compensated. And as well, there's been inconsistency in the information actually being available. So people understand that, you know what, we're looking for people, here's the deal. And we're looking for people over here and you're gonna get nothing. And if you wonder why that is, then ask, because we're not sure ourselves. Because there is inconsistency, and I think it would be great if we could give consideration to these nominal reimbursements. Thank you.
Thanks for that input, and I'm sure that the clerk's going to check, and the CAO will check on the information that's available on our website today. So thanks for that good discussion. Going to call the motion. All in favor? Thank you. That motion is carried. Rob, we have another one here, which is going to read in that the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes dated July the 24th, 2018 be adopted as presented, that the following resolution contained therein be endorsed, that report CAORAAC 1418 be received, and that the draft multi-year accessibility plan 2018-2022 be endorsed, and that staff begins to implement the recommendations contained within this strategy. Put that on the floor. Councillor Burley, seconder Councillor Greenfield. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Eccles.
Just a quick question, maybe this one should have been on the last. What's the difference between this committee and the one that we just passed?
Sorry?
What's the difference between this committee and the one that we just passed to form?
Form. The previous committee has no actual authority, I would say, for the local municipalities, and that they've never been designated as representatives for the local committees. And therefore, the local committees aren't really bringing any materials to the Grey County AAC. It's been almost exclusively county business to this point. There's been a couple of situations in recent meetings where we had a service club out of West Grey that presented some information, and we were happy to look at it for them, or submitted some site plans for a pavilion project.
Yes.
But that would be the main difference, is that our current committee as it is right now is only overseeing county business.
So he's looking to
but
broaden it.
If I could, but it's meeting the mandate from the province for those lower tiers. So what we're doing, what we just did was really, we have an accessibility committee. We're just putting more terms of reference, ability to work at the lower tier.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, but I would, in my perspective from it right now, we do have, our committee is not currently meeting the requirements for the province for some of the local tiers right now.
Okay.
You want to fix that up, right?
Yeah,
That's your goal.
that's right.
Right. Okay, any other further discussions? I'll call the motion. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you, Ram. We await your report. Thank you. Next one is from Kevin with regard to the County Paramedic Services Response Time Performance Plan, and that I'm going to put on that report PSR CW 0918 be received, and that the 2019 response time performance plan outlined in the report be approved by October the 1st, 2018, and submitted to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care by October the 31st, 2018. Put that on the floor. Councillor Mackey, seconded by Councillor Woodbury. Discussion. Kevin.
Afternoon, Council. So today I'm here to talk to you about the response time target performance plan for 2019. Yearly, we submit this to the ministry, our plan for the next year. Under legislation, we need to do this yearly. It's under Regulation 257, Part 8. And we first submitted our plans in 2012 and started measuring them in 2013. And our response times actually in 2012 created where we are today. We used what we were doing at that time for how we were responding to calls, helped us determine the times. We haven't changed our response times as far as reducing them. We've actually improved them since that time. Our response time for CTAS 1s used to be at 50%, but now we actually say it's 60% in 8 minutes, and our CTAS 3 to 5 where it was set at 30 minutes, and we moved it down to 20 minutes. So we've nothing but improved our response time since the plan started. So there's 6 criteria. 5 of the performance targets are measured by response time related to the CTAS score, the Canadian Triage Acuity Scale, similar to what you see in the hospitals when you go into the hospital when you're graded on your condition and how quickly you're going to be seen and emerge. And then one of the 6 is how we respond to cardiac arrest, and it can be how quickly we get a defibrillator a person in the community, that could be fire departments or the general public. So the response time targets, the first one, the time is set by the government, is 6 minutes for cardiac arrest, and we determine the percentage of time. So ours here is 40%. For CTAS 1, at 8 minutes, it's set by the ministry, and ours is at 60%. And then the CTAS 2, 3, 4, and 5 criteria, that both the time and the percentile is set by us here. So percentile response time, you've probably seen this before, but I just think it's important we just review it, just so, because sometimes people get it mixed up with an average. Really what it is a time measurement, a percentage of calls where the paramedics arrive in the scene of a specified time frame. And when you talk about a 90th percentile, if you did 1,000 calls, they take one time, and that's the 900th call, and that's your 90th percentile. So we can say 9 times out of 10 on a 90th percentile, that's how quickly we'll be there. So if you look at our 90th for this year, so far till June 30th, the 90th is 15:20, but the average is 7:20. So just you can see the difference when you actually look at that, when you compare the two of them. So just a bit of a definition of what CTAS is. When you think of a CTAS 1, it's really your obvious immediate threats like cardiac arrest, choking, major trauma. CTAS 2 is where you have somebody with chest pain, could be having a heart attack or a head injury that's not unconscious. CTAS 3 is urgent care, so maybe some mild to moderate breathing problems, some anxiety or agitation. And CTAS 4 could be a minor laceration needing stitches or not really a complicated fracture. And then when you get into CTAS 5, it's something that could really be deferred, like a sore throat or a dressing change. So this just gives you an idea of where we've been in the past and where we are today. We've already talked about our targets for, so CTAS 1 is 40% in 6 minutes. Or sorry, cardiac arrest is 40% in 6 minutes. CTAS 1 is 8 minutes, 60% of the time. And then the ones we set are all we keep at the 90th percentile. So the CTAS 2 is 15 minutes, and then 3, 4, and 5 is 20 minutes, 90% of the time. In 2017, from a report earlier, we were slightly below in cardiac arrest and our CTAS 2, and we're meeting all the other targets in 2017. In 2018, it's similar. We're slightly below in the cardiac arrest of where we were in 17, but our CTAS 2s are actually better at this point than they were last year. So we're performing similar to where we were last year, I would say, just by looking at this, like we're within like a percentile. If you look at our 5-year average, it's been holding pretty well around the same. So around that 15-minute mark for CTAS 2s, and then our CTAS 1s, the 5-year average is 63, and we're actually above that this year at 67.8. So those are the sick of the sick that aren't in cardiac arrest. So just based upon where we are today with our response times and where we have been in the past, we're recommending that we continue with the same targets for 2019. So for cardiac arrest, it would be 6 minutes, 40% of the time. CTAS 1, 8 minutes, 60% of the time. CTAS 2 would be 15 minutes, 90% of the time. And then your CTAS 3, 4, and 5 will remain the same at the 90th percentile. Just some variables affecting performance. Just in the accuracy of the data, sometimes when you look at the difference between what we see in our ambulance, we call ADRS data, or ADRS, is and based upon what we see on our calls, our digital calls, when they match, they don't always match up. The positive thing is there's very few, if like as far as ACRs, where we have a call in ADRS where we don't have an ambulance call report, so that means that for every patient we're getting an ACR. I think for the whole year so far it says we're missing 4, but typically that's where you have multiple patients on multiple calls, and it could be another municipality doing the call, stuff like that. So that's good, but there is some inaccuracies there, but I think it's getting better. as a time goes on in automation, like we're really waiting for the real-time data and where we get the automatic the dispatch data from CAC, we'll be able to use GPS more, and we'll also get the data live as it comes in. So in Windsor, they're seeing really positive benefits to this. The next one is the community response to cardiac arrest. Really, this one here is just making sure we get the time, because at that point, nobody's really taking the time of what time the defibrillator arrived at them. It's really by voice and comparing times, so it's not always accurate. But so that one there is it could benefit or it could hurt us. So it's just hard to tell. There's really no way of automating that time. Some challenge about meeting targets in rural Ontario. The CTAS ones and cardiac arrest are really a small amount of what our calls are. There's probably less than 200. You're a very small percentile of how many calls we do actually meet that criteria, so it's hard to move those numbers. And the provincial targets, when you think about a 6 or minute response to a cardiac arrest, or an 8-minute response to a CTAS 1, really what you're looking at there is a 4 to 5 minute drive time, or a 6 to 7 minute drive time for CTAS 1, because we don't take it from the time we leave the door. We take it from the time we get the call. So you have to build in the shoot time. So the paramedics get in the truck, find where the location of the call is, and go. So when we have this low population density and large geography, it can be hard to meet those targets. And I showed you on the map last time about how you can see how in the areas where we have the ambulance stations, we can meet those targets. But when you start to get outside those drive times, it gets hard to meet them. You just physically can't. As far as call volumes, we are seeing an increase in call volumes, 6.6% for Code 3 and 4.9% for Code 4 over the past 10 years. And when you look at our call volume in 2012, it was 11,372, and that's where we say the call volume peaked. And so since that time, through this group, through council, we worked to actually, with direction with the hospitals and long-term care to reduce our non-emergency transfers. So what we were able to do there is to focus on the emergency calls. So I believe in 2012, we were probably doing around 2,700 transfers. Today, we're only doing around 300. But our calls now are back to where they were, and this year, we will go above where they were back when we did the response time plan. The good thing is we're relatively holding our own on the response times. Like, they're actually holding, and they are better now than when we actually took over in 2004. And we're doing significantly more calls. But it's something to pay attention to. Like, we get the response times monthly, and they marry up the data between IMEDIC, which is our ambulance call reports, and the ministry data. We look at it monthly to make sure there's no drifts, but we keep an eye on it. But again, it's been holding around that even with these increases in call volumes. But just as time goes on with these, right now we're looking at 9 or 8.7% this year. Last year was close to 10%. That's almost 20% in 2 years, and that's a lot of calls to absorb. And we just have to keep an eye that we don't start to drift on our response times. So we just have to look at, be more resources, changes in targets. But there's also chances for changes in the way we deliver the service as well. So the ministry is working on this. It's slow, but it is started in the right direction. There was changes to the Ambulance Act in December of last year that allows us to do some different, have some different options for care. And the ministry really wants to improve the quality of care across the patient's journey. So the first one that they've done is are introducing a new dispatch center. It's called MPDS. They've actually been able to release that now, Medical Priority Dispatch System. In the province right now, they're using a system that they designed themselves, which probably isn't the best tool. And there's lots of evidence for this MPDS. And they were supposed to have it in Mississauga by spring of this year, but it sounds like it's been delayed till the fall. It is quite an undertaking, but once it gets out and gets going, then it'll be spread across the whole Ontario. Toronto and Niagara, and I think, no, it's Toronto and Niagara are the only ones using it now. Ottawa probably the next one, and then Mississauga. So, but again, London probably won't be too far behind once they get it rolled out. Niagara and Toronto have been using it because they're technically a private dispatch center that's funded by the province, so they've been able to move to these tools ahead of everybody else, but they've seen really good benefit from it. So as far as paramedic practice goes, it's going to change the way we can do business as well. Right now, before the change of the act in December, by law, we had to take everybody to the hospital. Now, with changes to the act, again, the standards have to pick up, and also public consultation and stuff like that. But we will be able to have alternate destinations and alternate care paths for people. And I can see down the road where you would have a paramedic with an expanded scope, community paramedic type style, that they could go out and do treat and refer and treat and release. The whole idea of that is that you could, for those low acuity CTAS calls, that most likely wouldn't benefit from going to the hospital, you can keep them out of the hospital, keep them in their home, still have contact with a physician, and still give them appropriate care, and probably care that they would like better than actually going and sitting in a merge for 6 or 8 hours right in their home. But what that allows us to do is use single person response, and then use the ambulances we have to pick up the more critical that we know need transport, like the cardiac arrests and the CTAS 1s and the CTAS 2s, and we'll take them to the appropriate facility. And just to Chatsworth Base, it's well underway. They have the footings in the ground, and the plan is that we'll be in the first week of December, so we're really looking forward to that. We'll be booking our community paramedic on out there from 7 to 7. We'll be moving resources of Owen Sound and Durham into that area for coverage, and so we really hope that we'll catch those calls in the center of the county. That right now it's strictly a distance issue, and for now in Chatsworth area we are doing coverage on the long weekends, and we go to the Katy Market and stuff like that to make sure that wherever we can spread out our resources. Because really right now it's like we're busy and it's a volume issue, but the big thing still is area. We have a very large county, and just trying to spread out our resources. Anytime you have 2 paramedic crews looking at each other, it's probably better they're spread out, because that's the best thing you do, is spread out our resources as much as we can.
Yes, Councillor Mackey, you have a question, Kevin?
Thanks, Gordon. Kevin, the treat and refer, treat and release program, any estimate how many calls per year that you might be able to? I think that's a great idea, that you don't have to take them to the hospital. Any idea what call volume that might include?
I don't have the exact number, Councilor Mackey, for sure, but I would think that when you see some of the reports of the ministry as the province as a whole, there's a significant number of people that could be, as long as there's the right care and the right destination pathway, there's a significant number. We're looking at patients, some CTAS 3s and the 4s and 5s that we would be able to do other things with. Not everybody in every category, because even if you're CTAS 4, you still may need to go to the hospital, but there is a significant number.
Do you
Go
think
ahead.
there's any potential liability there if we make a mistake when we treat and refer or treat and release instead of taking them to the hospital?
There is liability, but that's why you look at evidence. It'd be evidence-based practice that we know. For instance, there's no evidence of this yet, but we can, as far as a study that I know of for hypoglycemic patients, but when I speak to our base hospital doctor, Dr. Eby, if we treat somebody in the home with dextrose, we start an IV and give them D50, we take them to the hospital and they monitor them for 4 hours, and they don't do any care. They're short of taking their vital signs. If they were at home and had a responsible person with them, they really don't even have to go to the hospital, because we've corrected the hypoglycemia. Now, if they have the flu or vomiting and stuff like that, or a change in their medication, those people, obviously, we need to go. But most of the time, these people don't have any care. Nothing's changed. So there is a risk, but there's always a risk, I guess, in care. But that's why you look to the evidence and best practices that, it would be clear algorithms, no different than our protocols for giving medications, that each patient category that we would, and a lot of this stuff, I can see it moving to where, there'd be a patch to a physician even for some of these, where the physician, you'd give the report and they would get the clearance.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Kevin? Okay. One quick question for me is on the cardiac arrest. Do you keep, let's say, the distance traveled, because you have a big geographic area? In other words, the time from A to B is sort of a given. Do you try and sort of say, well, we made that A to B in a timely manner? Do you kind of look at that? Because, traveling, 20 minutes travel time is maybe what's really happening, and if you do it in 19 minutes, you've achieved something.
We built into the ambulance call report CTAS exceptions.
Right.
So if for sudden cardiac arrest, if it goes over 6 minutes, the crew has to actually put in a reason why they were over 6 minutes. And most often it's distance.
It's
Could be weather, it could be a combination, but most often
Right.
it's distance. But we have, and this is no different than any level for CTAS 1, we have an exception criteria for over 8 minutes, the crew has to respond why, and no
Okay.
different than 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have learned a lot of stuff through that, like we've learned, mapping issues and, crews sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes they need more education in mapping. Could be, again, it goes back to distance and weather. There could be an error at CAC, it could be an error in the 911 information, so, yeah, so we do look at those.
Okay, thanks for that. It's great to hear that 911 is going to be changing too, so. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you, Kevin. Next on the agenda is the memorandum of settlement from OPSU, and that reports HRRCW 0318 regarding the Social Services OPSU memorandum of settlement be received and the collective agreement between the County of Gray and OPSU Local 266 Social Services be ratified. Put that on the floor. Councillor McKeon, Councillor Boddy. Go ahead, Grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and Council. What you have in front of you here is it's really the third report that you're getting for negotiations consecutively for a 1.61% wage increase. This is for our Social Services Department. They are represented by OPSU. We started negotiating with this group back in January of 2018, and we had several quite good days of back and forth. Social Services, the OPSU bargaining team wanted more wages than the 1.61, and we're not satisfied with that. We didn't manage to get the deal at the table without the help of a conciliator. So Social Services OPSU did file for conciliation, and we had the labor board up, and through that day we did manage to get to the 1.61 without really any other additional financial obligations. They wanted more benefits, more vacation, different things like that. And we tried to reason with them, and again, with the help of the labor board and our previous two collective agreements that were also settled at 1.61, that gave us an opportunity to settle with this group as well. We were looking for a 3-year deal. It was their feeling that the economy was picking up, and it was going to pick up by 2020, so they weren't looking for the 3-year deal. We got a 2-year deal with this group, and we'll be back at it again at the beginning of 2020 in January. I think that the relationship was good at the table, and we had some really constructive conversations. Barb Fady was there along with a couple of other managers, and we managed to get some information in here and some wording in regards to scheduling, in regards to vacancies and 18-month temporary positions and so on. So my goal is to get the 1.61. That's where we got to. That is the total compensation for this package. There's no more on the table after that.
Thanks, Grant. Any questions of Grant with regard to this particular report? Yes, Councillor Frostberg?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So what we're looking at is the amendments that, it's just the amendments. We have to then take this and apply it to, what, the principal master agreement?
Yeah, so what we have is a collective agreement, and we sit down every 2 to 3 years, depending on the duration of the collective agreement, to look at any amendments. Management would propose a variety of language issues and so on. And then OPSI would come to the table and say they want way more stuff. Benefits, vacation, wages, and so on. What you're seeing here are amendments to the current wages. And the current wages could be anywhere from $20 to $40 an hour. 1.61 would be applied to those wages, and then same following the next year. So it is merely an amendment current agreement. Anything that you don't see in the memorandum of settlement means that the rest of the information in the collective agreement remains the same.
And when was the last time we reviewed the full collective agreement?
We review the full collective agreement every time we go to negotiations.
When was the last time council saw the full collective agreement?
I'm not entirely sure if council has had an opportunity to go through the full collective agreement, but it is available for anybody who wants to read it.
Is that available somewhere online?
We can send it to you electronically. We do have electronic versions of all of our collective agreements.
So it is a public document?
Yes.
And I just, I was looking at the amendments going, might not be a bad idea to have a link to the master document, just for reference.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Gordon. Grant, on page 79 of our overall package, but just the embolded part around overtime,
Yes, that's actually our proposal,
okay.
and that's
Will
something
not
that,
unreasonably be denied. I guess that part I'm wondering about.
so the piece that we were looking at was that we wanted to make sure that the overtime, if somebody was going to be working overtime, it had to be pre-approved.
Yes,
And in that, on the union side, it won't be unreasonably denied. So for instance, if you have a client that comes into the office at 4:30, has a real issue that they need to deal with at that time, the employee doesn't have an opportunity to speak with the manager, they have to stay an extra hour and a half to deal with this client, it's a bit of an emergency situation, that we wouldn't unreasonably deny that hour and a half of overtime as a result of the employee not being able to get in touch with the manager for pre-approval.
thank you, that clears that up for me.
That's good. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, call the vote. All in favor? Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Another successful contract. Thank you. Okay. We have a franchise agreement. Put this on the floor. That's report TR CW 43-18 regarding the EPCOR model franchise agreement be received and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the warden and clerk to execute the 2018 EPCOR model franchise agreement. Speaking on that is Graham Wilson. Need a mover and a seconder. Mr. Eccles, Mr. McQueen. Thank you. Thank you, Graham. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The report you have in front of you is, as is noted in the executive summary, uses a model franchise agreement that's really set down by the Ontario Energy Board. We use this for this type of agreement because it does involve gas distribution. EPCOR is a gas distribution company that wants to install some of their infrastructure on one of our roads. It's named in the report as Gray Road 25, running easterly from, it's actually west from Highway 6 to Scone, or to the boundary road, the Grey Bruce boundary road. So this would be put in place, and then when EPCOR did want to do the installation, they would require municipal consent as well as an encroachment permit. So this just kind of sets that all up. We meet the requirements of the Ontario Energy Board, as does EPCOR, and then when the application comes in for the work to be done, there'd be a permit issued, as we do with all utilities.
Okay. Good news to see us being prepared for the future. Yes, Councillor Mackey.
So there has been discussion about 25 being extended through to Roberts Farm Equipment as a possibility. Has that been taken into consideration if that was going to be done, the construction work, and how this would apply to the gas line?
This report was written by Matt Mark, our engineering manager, and reviewed by Pat, and unfortunately, they're both on vacation. I can't answer that specific question.
It'll be duly noted, and you'll get back. Yeah, go ahead. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Councillor Pringle.
Just further to that, though, I believe, in following up on Scott's question, long-term, that was part of our, we were going to trade off. I think 25 would become one block further south. So 25 would be a continuation, Graham, right to the Grey Bruce line from Dornick.
Okay, yeah.
So assuming that's still going to happen. Presently, the last few sections are municipal township. But eventually, the agreement, I believe, is that it will be 25 complete from Dornick to
Yeah.
Grey Bruce line.
Again, so that's, you're speaking of the road transfer, that,
Yes.
yeah. And again, that's being looked at by Pat.
Okay. Yeah, my understanding is that they realize that is eventually what's going to happen, or that's presumed to what's going to happen, so.
Okay. Okay.
So there's an awareness that you've brought forward, okay? Councillor Fosbrook, thank you.
Thank you. Executive summary, third paragraph, last sentence. There is no flexibility in modifying any part of the agreement. Don't see that every day. So who decided that we don't get to decide?
My understanding is it's the Ontario Energy Board that sets down the agreement that is attached, basically lays out all the conditions, the definitions of the agreement.
So it's the Ontario Energy Board that you interpret dictates this? Okay, well, I'm not sure the degree to which we might want to question that. And then page 90, very last paragraph. For decommissioned parts of the gas system used for purposes other than the transmission and distribution of gas, issues such as relocation costs will be governed by the relevant municipal access agreement. What agreement would that be? Is that like Grey County, or is that lower tier?
I'm sorry, I don't have, my numbers aren't page 90, which,
So this is page 5 of the agreement,
okay.
point 16, sub C, very last sentence, for decommissioned parts of the gas system.
Yeah, the encroachment permit or our municipal consent would speak to if there was future development of the road and the utility need to be relocated, that would be borne by the utility.
Okay, so we're
Let's-
governed by the relevant municipal access agreement. Is this the relevant municipal access, or is it, they're
The
referring to something
encroachment
else?
Permit and the municipal consent, that would be the relevant,
So it's an encroachment agreement that they're referring to here?
yeah.
Okay. And I guess the last question is, this is, like, I'm looking at the color coding here, I'm trying to decide, this is all new proposed? This is why we're looking at this?
Yes, so the north-south main trunk, you'll see the dashed line, and then that's where they would make the connection, and really it's going over to service the southern part of Bruce County. That's where the gas is going, yeah.
So where you have high-pressure mainline pipeline system,
Yeah.
do the people that live along there know what's coming? And was there a consultation process that you're aware of?
Again, I can't answer.
And we're looking to enter into this agreement because we can't do anything to modify it?
Well, the agreement that's attached is what's set out by the Ontario Energy Board. From that, we would still use our encroachment permit to ensure that the county needs are met and that we have our conditions in place, which would include moving the utility if we had to expand the road or.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Eccles had a comment?
Consultation has been done extensively with this. I can't speak for Chatsworth, but certainly with West Grey on the expansion of the high-pressure line and the pressure line that EPCOR is putting in. There has been, as I said, extensive public consultation on this.
Okay, so,
Thanks, Kevin.
okay,
Yes, just Ted. I would verify that with Township of Chatsworth as well.
Okay, so everybody's being talked to here. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the motion. All in favor of accepting this? Thanks, Graham. Good to see expansion of natural gas.
Thanks, we're back to the consent.
Okay, we're going backwards. It's-
Building task force minutes.
Okay, put this on the floor. That, this is from the consent agenda, that the Building Task Force minutes dated July 26, 2018 be adopted as presented, and that the following resolution contained therein be endorsed, that the report HDR BTF 1318 regarding future plans for provincial court building be received, and that the provincial offenses building be decommissioned in the fall of 2018, and that the funding required for the decommissioning comes from one-time reserve, and that funding to expand the parking lot using the former provincial offenses building area be considered in the 2019 budget. Put that on the floor. Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Fosbrook.
McKean.
Councillor McKean, did you bring, McQueen, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Councillor McQueen, you want to have a comment on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, County Council. I think this recommendation is a little bit premature with regards to us being in lame duck, and I don't see what's the hurry right at this moment. It says in the report that there's 4,987 square feet of space. If you look at that, even at a quick number of $200 a square foot, to building a building like that would be $1 million. Is there no value in this building in itself, just to knock it down and take away the use of that building? I look around the city of Owen Sound, and maybe the mayor of Owen Sound could probably maybe know of a use for that building, whether it's for mental health or something else with regards to a women's shelter, or anything that could be a possibility. I know that we talked about public use for this building, but the problem is not everybody's here into the later hours of the evening. Why couldn't it be a community building? I just think that, I think it's a little bit premature in the sense of just knocking it down without having an opportunity to look at other options. It talked about in there a number of costs, $500,000 over the next 5 years. Have we done an assessment report from a third party on that building? I know we look at a school, we had an assessment report done on a school that we're looking at partnership or being part of or trying to buy. Should we not do the same thing with this? $200,000 this is for roof repair. I didn't know the roof was leaking until I read this report. Seems to be, I don't recall ever hearing that being a problem before. $20,000 for a front door, must be a pretty fancy front door. I don't know. I guess I don't see enough. I see the points, but I don't see enough background behind the reasons. I see every reason why they want to tear it down, but I don't see any reasons why you want to keep it. And I think that's something that should take a little bit of a pause. 5,000 square foot building is the first size of a building that, whether it could be used for commercial or whatever, or however, could be could be repurposed. And I think that we need to take a look at that before we make the decision. And maybe that's up to the next county council to make that decision. And I think, being us as a lame duck council, I think that's something that should be put off to the next council.
Thanks for that. Councillor Burley, you have a comment?
Thanks, Councilor McQueen. They're very good comments, but I disagree with them. My comments in no way want to slam the contractor that worked on that building. Let's make that very clear. I've had a lot of history in that building. When we done the first renovation of the building, changed it from the old museum into the existing building, it was out of date then. And it needed some real tender loving care at that time. Then we come back again to try and save the building itself because the exterior brick on the building were deteriorating, falling off the building. So we skinned the whole building trying to give some more life. That skin is now deteriorating, so it's that point where the building's life of the building is gone. The heating system is pretty well done. One of the units is gone now. It's just at the point where sooner or later, it's like going in a car. Do I get a new one or do I keep putting money into the old? We're at that point now with that building that it's time. It should be retired. And the committee felt that the most cost-effective way was to demolish the building, leave it as open space for now until later we decide what we can do with it. The services on the building would be capped and secured for future use. The hydro going to the building would be capped and with some form of transformer or whatever to save the lines, so that's those services are still there and ready for future use. But as for spending money into the building, it's not accessible. Is a big point which deteriorates the building. It would cost a lot of money to make it accessible. There's always been a problem with the front doors of the building with the water actually running into the building instead of away. So there's a great problem. The building's got a lot of headaches to the building, but not because of the former contractor.
Sounds like you're already working.
He just followed instructions, right? We have saved the flagpole. Councillor Fosbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just need to make sure I'm looking at the right spot here. Second page of the task force minutes. 2/3 of the way down, Ms. Shaw advised that the demolition would be approximately $50,000. An engineer report and permit would be required. What will the engineer's report tell us? And maybe we want to see that before we actually decide.
Yeah, Darren, do you want to?
Yep, I can answer it. The city of Owen Sound actually requires an engineer's report to demolish a building, so it is part of their demolition permit that is required. So that's why we put that in there.
And so what might that report tell us, and would it be helpful toward addressing some of the questions that have been raised?
I can speak to that.
CEO will.
The purpose of an engineer's report prior to demolition is to ensure that if there are any public safety issues with regard to bringing the building down, that everyone's aware of those and appropriate precautions are taken. So in a case where you've got a building that's fronting on a busy street and a sidewalk, is it going to be sufficient to have hoardings, or do you need to close that portion of the street? And that's the kind of thing that happens in that engineer's report.
So that answers that question. And have we had a recent assessment done? An actual building assessment?
Aaron, yeah.
Most of the numbers that we came from are from a BCA that was done. We also had, for the HVAC cost of 15 grand a unit, that is a quote that we've got from a third party, Emke Schaub, who reviews our rooftop units. That's what they're saying it costs to replace those. The roof replacement cost, it is based on a Garland roof, so we've used the square footage to calculate those costs. So we are going by our BCAs that was done for that building in 2011.
And are those available somewhere online?
I believe those are not available online, but we can get those to you.
Right. So an analysis was done by staff? That-
And a third party.
Yeah, through a third party, right. Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Ross?
Well, it answers my question that it exists. I'd love to see it, that's all. Thank you.
It's freedom of, you don't need to go through staff, we can get it for us. Councillor Ardell.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Sorry, I'll get my mic. I was just thinking here, I thought that Owen Sound was going to be using the council chambers soon, or were they moving here to have their council here? No? Oh, okay, I thought I heard that. I'm just wondering if Owen Sound would waive the engineering fees on that and help out Grey County. Why not ask?
Well, that's up to staff, and I don't think it's. Yeah, right. Anyhow, Councillor Bell has some words of wisdom here.
No, I'm not sure about the words of wisdom, Mr. Warden, but maybe to move things along here, because I do remember when the whole idea of the expansion of this building was brought forward, that building would be taken down. So I'm not sure exactly what's changed in that time. Mr. Burley, your building expertise suggests that at the time, and I remember you saying very well, that building over there is old and antiquated. Ms. Shaw has a recommendation in here that says it's going to cost $500,000 to refurbish the building. I mean, I think the handwriting's on the wall, and if I'm not mistaken, I thought there was a drawing that we could expand parking out in that area at some time, and that was all brought forward when this addition was to be put on this building. So I'm in favor of moving this along, Mr. Warden, and fully support the endorsement.
Possible?
Yeah, I just want to further comment that, you know, in addition to making sure that we're scrapping a building that we really should, I guess what struck me as well was, I do recall that that building and that space was part of the decision for the enhancement, whatever we've done to this building. But I would have thought that the costs to the entire project were incorporated into the entire project. So when I look at this, and I see that we're gonna go back to the tax base and to the one-time reserve, that wasn't what I was expecting, to actually have closure for this entire project. So just a comment.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other comments? Councillor McQueen?
Going back to where does it say that was part of the project to be tore down? I asked that question a few months back, or maybe it was a year ago, and it was told that there is no plan. Mr. Bell, I asked that question, and it's somewhere in the minutes because it was raised, and I asked the question, well, where does it say that we agreed to tear that down? And it was not in any plan that I asked that question to you, Mr. Burley, and you remember that. I guess the thing is everybody has an opinion. I know my colleague here has an opinion, but I think we try to base our opinions on assessment reports. I don't see an assessment report, or there is some information, but I don't see that information. I look at the value of a 5,000 square foot building. Could it be severed off and sold? I guess the value is what it is, and it's also valuable space. I'm sure there's lots of businesses out there, lots of opportunities to take over a 5,000 square foot. Sure, I hear all this stuff of expenses. That's the first time I ever heard about a water leak in the roof. How long has it been leaking, Mr. Burley? Do you know? Through you, Mr. Chair.
It was well after the contractor left the premise.
So you were the fault of the leaking. I just think you have to be careful of putting yourself on that line. Anyway, I think this is a decision that doesn't have to be made today. I feel that it could be something with the next council could make that decision, and I feel that it's something that I ask for a deferral on that until the next council, or next county council's in place. So I'll ask for a deferral on that decision. Move a deferral.
You're moving a motion to defer the decision? A seconder for that motion? Councillor McKean seconds it. Discussion on the motion? Councillor.
Thanks, Warden Halliday. I, along with Councillor McQueen, do have I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more of a report on it to see just exactly, in our assessment report on what the building would need. And having only been in the building once, strictly as a council member, not as a participant of it, I was a customer, which I understand some of them don't pay the bills anyway, but anyway, that's good on another topic. I think that it wouldn't hurt to just even defer till the next council meeting, just to bring that stuff forward, just for, because I do, we're in the taxpayer's eye, and to have a building demolished when we're talking about not having an affordable housing and that type of thing, it may not fit the bill for that either, but I think we should take a look at it. Thank you.
For that, any other comments? Councillor Pringle?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I do sit on the committee, and we certainly asked the same questions that Councillor McQueen did at length, and there was a time when this building was used for storage of records. And I understand, I'm not sure where the records are stored now, Aaron, but there is no longer a need for this building for storage. Is that correct?
We've been using our storage building, the old museum, or I guess it's the old storage building. That's where some finance has stored their stuff, but we have also allocated a large storage room downstairs beside the staff room. So we've actually gained extra storage in this building as well.
Okay. All right. So it's no longer needed for storage. So just my summary is that we've asked all those questions and raised those concerns on behalf of all the members of council. So I'm content to move forward with the recommendation.
So we have a resolution on the floor, and Councillor McKean just wanted to be that the above resolution be deferred until the new council is in place. Do you want it still seconding that motion? Still seconding? Okay, Councillor Eccles, you want to speak?
I would. Thank you very much for the chance to address this. Councillor McKean, you made a statement that to defer this until at least the next council meeting. So I don't know whether you were asking to make an amendment. I would suggest that we do that, or that the resolution, not until the new council comes into place. If there's a problem with the heating in that building, if the other unit goes down, the new council won't be in place until December. And if we're leaving it at that, all of a sudden, if the heating goes, have been in November when it's been pretty frosty. Now all of a sudden we've got water pipes frozen and everything. That seems to be part of the issue here. I could support deferring this, but not till the new council comes into place, but, to a future date. And I think going on to what Councillor McKean said, with some further background information. So if you were willing to make that amendment, not
So-
until the new council, but until until a further date, when information can be brought forward.
Sounds, Councillor McKean, it's your words, you can,
And if you do that, I'd say.
I appreciate the commentary from Councillor Eccles, and I think I would be more, if it comes back at the next council meeting with some more information, I'd be willing to wait that long. We are in Owen Sound, but the next council meeting isn't until the, toward, I think it's September, because I think the one got,
in
surely there won't have
September,
been really, really cold weather before that.
so,
But my point is, the way this motion is,
Yes, it is.
it would be until, so it has to be either amended to get to that.
Yeah, I would, yes, thank you, Kevin. I'd make an amendment that it would be brought back at the next council meeting, regularly scheduled council meeting or committee meeting.
Councillor McQueen, are you happy with,
Go there. Has there ever been a heating problem with the building? I mean, I see this stuff here. I don't see any third-party report backing this up. I don't see any information. It's, if you want something to happen, you put it on a piece of paper and you make it happen. I don't see a third-party report here to say that this is what it is. So, I stand by my motion. If nobody wants a second, that's fine. I asked a question, has there been a problem with the heating in the building? Obviously, it was run for a lot of years, and, I mean, we do have mechanical things with all buildings.
you want to comment on it?
Yeah, so every year we have a third party come in and actually look at our rooftop units. So this past spring, we had MQ Schaub into the building to look at them, and they give us a price breakdown on what it would cost and what future preventive maintenance we should be doing on them. And they're saying that those units are nearing their end of life. So we've done actually, one of the units we took apart from another one and put it on there to temporary fix it, not knowing what we were kind of headed towards in the future. So one, we have temporary fix right now, but it will need fixed in the immediate future.
So just
Okay.
to follow up that, 4 units, but if one went down, you still have 3 units to keep the building at a minimum heat, right?
That's correct, but one, they are divided into compartments, right? So one heating unit does one compartment, could do one courtroom, the other one does another one. So you're gonna take part of the building out of service.
Open the doors.
Okay, so are you still on for seconding the motion as is written?
If possible, I'd like to withdraw on the second. I believe that if, as I said, I think if I had some more information, and as I said, take a look at the building, and if we can fix the heating, and can we turn it into, affordability units? I'm just looking to see if there's no other options, it's too expensive, then fine. We've had a town hall in the Blue Mountains. We built the new one, there was so many deficiencies in that building that it was decided to take it down. So I understand the logic of it, but it just isn't been presented possibly in the right vein,
Okay.
that's all.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to be clear with council so I know what staff and I are to bring back. You are looking for the report as it's drafted provides that the estimate of $500,000 worth of repairs and maintenance that's required in the building if it's going to be kept, plus the ongoing $51,000 a year in cleaning and utility costs, et cetera. So what I'm hearing from you is what you want is the breakdown of that 500,000. So you want to see the BCA page, you want to actually have the assessments that were done to review for yourself. Because I certainly hope that we're not, I mean, staff worked to pull these numbers together. They are based on the assessment work that was done. So if that's what you're looking for, is the background behind that, we can certainly provide that. We have it now, we can provide it at the next meeting if that would be helpful to you.
Okay. Councillor McQueen, your call?
I guess I'm not getting a seconder to my original motion, is to defer it to the new council. So I guess that motion's off the floor.
Motion falls away. If no seconder. Any other motions? Yes, Councillor McKean.
Well, to the discussion, I wouldn't mind having it brought back at the next council meeting with a little bit more information. And this, discussion hopefully will be circulated in the paper, and maybe we'll get some feedback from the public on ideas that they may have of what would be a suitable accommodation for it. So,
Okay.
and maybe that will open up a whole different discussion.
All right, that's good. So Councillor McKean has made that the resolution be deferred until the September 13th meeting. Seconder, Councillor Eccles. Call the motion on that. All in favor?
No, comment first.
Oh, sorry, let's comment. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm miscued there, sorry.
I guess that I sit here a little bit frustrated because we have a committee process. There is a building committee. Councillor McQueen, I shared your concerns. I sit on this committee, and believe you me, it was well debated. Yeah, sorry?
I'm adding to that debate.
I appreciate that you want to add to the debate, but I just feel that there's a little bit of perhaps not enough trust or in your committee. Your committee saw a report from staff. We received a very good information. It was debated and decided. So it's just a little bit frustrating to be a committee member and to see that recommendation is not, I guess, being trusted. We saw the information. You can trust that we saw that information. I appreciate you can disagree with the recommendation. Feel free to do so. But I thought that the staff did a very, very good job of convincing a skeptic like me. I thought that we should be looking for ideas for further use of that building, but I just can't see with the overwhelming evidence that we as a committee received about the state of affairs of that building, about what it would take to bring it up and to keep it up. It just did not make any sense at all.
Thanks for those comments. Motion's on the floor. The above resolution be deferred until September the 13th, 2018 meeting. Call the motion. All in favor? Do a count.
Hold your hands, sorry.
Hold your hands up high.
This is for,
Voting in favor of the deferral. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed?
Opposed? Motion's lost. Okay,
So we'll go back to.
good
the
debate.
original motion.
Go back to the motion.
Yep.
That's on the floor with Councillor Hicks and Councillor Fosbrook. And we've had discussion on it, so all in favor of this motion?
Record a vote, Mr. Warden.
Okay.
So you're voting on the original motion as it stands?
To demolish.
To demolish, correct. Counselor Pringle?
Yes.
Counselor Mackey?
No.
Counselor Barfoot? Oh, he's gone. Counselor Burley?
Yes.
Counselor McQueen?
No.
Warden Halliday?
No?
Counselor Patterson?
Yes.
Counselor Hicks?
Yay.
Counselor Clumpus? Yes. Counselor Greenfield? Counselor Body?
Yes.
Counselor Wright is gone. Counselor Fosbrook?
no.
Counselor Woodbury,
Yes.
Counselor McKean,
No.
Counselor Ardell,
Nay.
Counselor Eccles,
Yes.
Counselor Bell.
Yes.
Motion is carried, 49-28.
Thank you. Okay. Good exercise in democracy. The next one is what?
Swift,
Swift?
C.
C. Okay, who called this one out?
Counselor Fosberg.
Counselor, okay. Motion that the correspondence from Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology Incorporated dated July the 30th, 2018 be received for information. Put that on the floor. Counselor Fosbrook, seconder. Sure. Seconder Bell. Discussion. Counselor Fosbrook.
So earlier I misspoke, got my auditor's reports confused. This appears to be financial statements, audited financial statements for the year ending 2016.
From Swift, yes.
Yeah. When do we expect 2017?
Maybe
I
the
believe
CEO.
their AGM, the SWIFT AGM is in January, I think, of each year. So it does appear that they're more than a year behind, but I think it's because of the turn of the calendar.
And so, just from my recollection, how long has SWIFT been its own entity with audited year-end financials? Like, did they have audited year-end financials for 2015, 14? When did that begin?
They didn't get their funding from the federal government, I want to say, until 2017? Do you know? I don't, sure, I'd have to look
I
at their
was going to
website.
say, I think that the way it was set up with the governance board and whatnot would have been in 2015 when SWIFT,
They came to be.
yeah, came into that
Right.
corporation.
So this would be
So
the
this would be their
second.
second audited statements that have been out.
Okay. I have to admit, I didn't study the entire report. Does anybody know, was there a management letter issued?
None
No,
was-
or we don't know?
None was spoken to.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on Swift?
Well, I just thought it was a good opportunity to get whatever update there is available on SWIFT, if there is anything to talk about.
Okay. Any other discussions with regard to SWIFT and how it's moving forward? Doesn't seem to be, so call the motion. All in favor of accepting the SWIFT report? Thank you. All carried.
Kevin, you were right. It was 2015 by the note on page 19.
Okay, so verify that 15 was the first year. Next one, which was the,
Active development file list, D.
okay, D is that the active development file list be received for information. Councillor Fosbrook has some questions. Put it on the floor. Councillor Fosbrook, seconded by Councillor Eccles. Discussion.
So when I look at the information that's available on the website, I see active files. Is this actual document somewhere, because this is like the Coles notes. Is it somewhere available that I just can't find it?
Sorry, just to clarify, this document here?
The planning active development file list. Mine's just not in color, sorry.
No, we don't have it anywhere posted other than through our meeting schedule when we present it to Committee of the Whole. So we try to bring this forward on a quarterly basis to Committee of the Whole, just to give them an update in terms of where files are at. It provides an opportunity, if there are any questions on developments, to update in terms of where they are at in the current process. And then what I suggest is that if there's any detailed questions on a specific project or development, to contact the staff person involved with respect to that, or you can just email myself.
Okay, well, I just thought there might be some merit in making this available to the masses.
Sure.
Because it's, like I said, a good Coles notes.
Yeah.
And I looked for it and wanted to make sure I didn't miss it somewhere.
Yeah, and we can look to post that somewhere else other than through our meeting calendar on a quarterly basis and just have it, when it's updated, we can then posted on.
Put it in the
website.
planning,
Yeah, put it in the planning applications,
Right.
website portion. It's a good
I think
suggestion.
that's good general information. Somebody
you.
may have some questions. Thank you for that.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Call the motion, all in favor? That motion is carried. So we've covered off everything?
No,
Where are we?
the planning appeals, put on the very last.
Sorry. Did I lose a page? I lost a page.
Here it is.
Yeah, there's the resolution.
Oh, that's what I need to, thanks, Kim. E was pulled that the local planning appeals tribunal list be received for information. Put that on, Counselor Fosberg, seconder. Have a seconder? Counselor Bell, okay, so any comments, Counselor Fosberg?
So I guess I'm still anxious to hear about the evolution of the local appeal, planning appeal tribunal. How is this coming together? Is this, like, are there advertisements out there that people are answering? What's going on there? Do we have one? Who are they? Maybe I'll start with that.
So, and this is where I think the name of local planning appeal tribunal is causing some confusion out there. There is the ability under the act for municipalities to establish a local, their own local appeal body. This is basically, the local planning appeal tribunal is just replacing the intermunicipal board. So any appeals now go to the local planning appeal tribunal. Any previous appeals, they may operate under the previous, the intermunicipal board procedures, but it's actually, all the appeals and matters are now heard by the local planning appeal tribunal. Unless you have a local appeal body, I think there's only one municipality that has that in place, I think it's the city of Toronto. So that's where there's a bit of, I think in the name of the local planning appeal tribunal, where there's some confusion still that this is a local body. It's not a local body. It's a provincial body that just replaces the Ontario Municipal Board.
So you don't anticipate any change in actual membership, it's just change in name?
That's correct. The previous board members that were on the Ontario Municipal Board at that time are still members of the chairs of the local planning appeal tribunal. So they're still hearing the hearings of the cases. It's just the procedures and the process has changed based on changes to what's now the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal Act, which replaced the Ontario Municipal Board Act.
Well, I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor McKean, you have a question there on LPAT.
Yes, thank you. And just to suit Randy then, so on the town of Blue Mountains, the appeal of the Gibraltar Pit, county involvement based in the OMB, attendance guidelines, blah, 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 blah. So in effect, it actually is LPAT, not the OMB that's looking after it. Am I correct there?
Yes, the reference to the Ontario Municipal Board attendance guidelines is because the report at that time that was presented was based on the Ontario Municipal Board. But the same guidelines were applied to any appeals that are submitted. So in the case of the Gibraltar Pit, the county would not be a party or participant at that hearing based on that protocol.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moved by Counselor Fosberg, second by Counselor Bell, that the local planning appeals tribunal list be received for information. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you for that. That covers off the consent agenda, revised form. Now we move on to other business. I know the CEO has a few bits of information she wants to share. Thank you.
Thank you. So just for everyone's information, we discussed requests for delegation at the AMO conference, and I just wanted council to be aware that we did get a positive response from the Ministry of Transportation, from the Ministry of Education, from Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. We were turned down by the Ministry of Health, and I'm still waiting to hear from the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and whatever that P stands for.
Forestry. Are we getting to meet with the ministers, or the parliamentary assistants?
Minister Hardeman from OMAFRA, Minister Thompson from Education, Parliamentary Assistant, whose name escapes me for a moment, from Transportation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got three confirmed, 2 ministers, 1 parliamentarian. Okay, that's good information. Any other business?
Councillor Pringle.
Yes, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just something as we get closer to the end of the term, I know we've done this other terms where the phone and the computer are made available to outgoing people to buy, perhaps. I did mention this to Jody a few months ago, so I only would remind senior staff if there was a report that needed to come forward on that. I know if we wait too late, it's very difficult to do. So if we have things in place that you can, ideally, I'd like to buy my phone and be able to just continue and keep it and whatever that is, even the laptop, if that's okay to do. But, and I would hope that you wouldn't wipe the slate clean, but no, I understand you will. Yeah.
Okay, so there needs to be a policy on that. Maybe there is one already, but we'll sort that
There
out.
may be, but I would just like staff to look
Right,
into that.
a refresh then.
Thank you.
And let everybody know. Right, okay, thank you. Okay, that's, any other business? Okay, seeing none, any notice of motion? Oh, notice of motions. Okay, well, the next thing is adjournment. Councillor Burley is adjourning, seconder, Councillor Ardell. We are officially adjourned. Thank you very much for attending.